Mendel and Punnett squares. And then we're going to move on to pedigrees.
Characteristics from their parents. They were able to calculate probabilities of having a specific trait or getting a genetic disease according to the information they had from the parents and the family history. But how is this possible? To understand how traits pass from one living being to its descendants, we need to go back in time to the 19th century and a man named Gregor Mendel. Mendel was an Austrian monk and biologist who loved to work with plants. By breeding the pea plants he was growing in the monastery's garden, he discovered the principles that rule heredity. In one of the most classic examples, Mendel combined a purebred yellow-seeded plant with a purebred green-seeded plant, and he got only yellow seeds. He called the yellow color trait the dominant one, because it was expressed in all the new seeds. Then he let the new yellow-seeded hybrid plants self-fertilize, and in this second generation he got both yellow and green seeds, which meant that the green trait had been hidden by the dominant yellow. He called this hidden trait the recessive trait. From those results, Mendel inferred that each trait depends on a pair of factors, one of them coming from the mother and the other from the father. Now we know that these factors are called alleles and represent the different variations of a gene. Depending on which type of allele Mendel found in each seed, we can have what we call a homozygous pea, where both alleles are identical, and what we call a heterozygous pea, when the two alleles are different. This combination of alleles is known as genotype, and its result, being yellow or green, is called phenotype. To clearly visualize how alleles are distributed amongst descendants, we can use a diagram called the Punnett square. You just place the different alleles on both axes, and then you figure out the possible combinations. Let's look at Mendel's peas, for example. Let's write the dominant yellow allele as an uppercase y, and the recessive green allele as a lowercase y. The uppercase y always overpowers its lowercase friend, so the only time you get green babies is if you have two lowercase y's. In Mendel's first generation, the yellow homozygous pea mom will give each pea kid a yellow dominant allele, and the green homozygous pea dad will give a green recessive allele, so all the pea kids will be yellow heterozygous. Then, in the second generation, where the two heterozygous kids marry, their babies could have any of the three possible genotypes, showing the two possible phenotypes in a 3-to-1 proportion. But even peas have a lot of characteristics. For example, besides being yellow or green, peas may be round or wrinkled. So we could have all these possible combinations: round yellow peas, round green peas, wrinkled yellow peas, and wrinkled green peas. To calculate the proportions for each genotype and phenotype, we can use a Punnett square too. Of course, this will make it a little more complex. And lots of things are more complicated than peas, like, say, people. These days, scientists know a lot more about genetics and heredity, and there are many other ways in which some characteristics are inherited, but it all started with Mendel and his peas.
All right, so today we're going to talk about pedigrees. Pedigrees are another way of looking at our heredity. So instead of using crosses of people where we know what we're crossing, so we crossed a lot of traits, like with the P's, we crossed, where we know it was homozygous or heterozygous for the P. Humans, there's really difficult to say, okay, we're going to have this individual, you're going to mate with this individual, and we know you have these traits. It's not very ethical either to tell people how they're going to mate, how they're going to reproduce. So we can look back through generations using a pedigree. Pedigree is like a family tree, and we can use different pedigrees to show, look at different traits. So in Alex's family, we can look at the trait, be like, okay, how many people in his family have brown hair? How many have blonde hair? How does that trait get passed down from generation to generation? So if you guys turn to your notes, pedigrees use genetic symbols to represent organisms. We use a square to represent males, a circle to represent females, shaded shapes. So if we have those shapes shaded, it means they have the trait. So shaded in square means a male who has the trait. Shaded in circle is a female who has that trait. So for example, we're looking at people who don't have 20/20 vision. If you don't have 20/20 vision, you're going to be shaded in. So in Avery's family, she'd be a circle shaded in. And we can look above her at her parents and say her mom and her dad both needed glasses. They'd both be shaded in. We look above at their parents and maybe neither of their parents needed glasses, so they wouldn't be shaded in. The lines connecting the shapes indicate the relationship. So if there's one straight line between a square and a circle, that represents a mating pair. Also could represent marriage, but typically we say it represents a mating pair. In family trees, it usually represents marriage. Someone gets divorced and they have kids, they get another straight lines, usually a dotted line for another set of offspring. This shape, which is kind of like an upside down Y, represents siblings. These two would be connected. You'd have a mating pair, then you'd have the vertical line coming down, and then branching off into squares and circles, or two circles if you had two daughters. Anybody have the same sex sibling here? Alex, you have another brother. So Alex's tree would have, pedigree would have a square and a circle for his parents, with a line going directly across from them, line coming straight down, then coming off and down to two squares instead of squares. He has two males in his generation. So for example, a man that is colorblind is a recessive trait, marries a woman that's not colorblind. They have 3 children, 1 boy and 2 girls. None of them are colorblind. So we always shade in the trait that has, or shade in the shapes that have that trait. So we'll start with a man that's colorblind. So we have a square that's shaded in. Because he has the trait. He marries a woman that's not colorblind. So she's going to be a circle that's not colored in because she doesn't have that trait. And pedigrees only show the phenotypes pedigrees only show phenotypes, what they look like or what they show, the physical appearance, not the genetic makeup. So we do a line across as our mating pair. And then they have 3 children. So that's where we're going to do our offspring line with our siblings. Since there's 3 of them, instead of having 2, we're going to have 3 lines coming down. We have 1 boy, 2 girls, none of which are colorblind. So I'll have a square and 2 circles, none of which colored in. We can look at our generations. That top one is our first generation. So if we're only looking at 2 generations, generations start at the very top of the pedigree. They work their way down. So I am currently, that's alive, the 3rd generation on my mom's side. My grandparents, my parents, and then me and my sister, my cousins. So I'd be generation 3. So you have your initial generation, generation 1. Their offspring is generation 2. The offspring's offspring is generation 3. Anybody not be able to tell what this is? There's a number in there. Anybody not see that? This is one of the tests for color blindness. If you're color, I think it's red-green color blindness. If you can't see the 25 in there, then they do more tests for red-green color blindness.
Do you do another one?
Maybe more. Let's do this one together as a class. So a couple has 4 children. The mother has a widow's peak, the father does not. 2 female children end up with a widow's peak, 2 do not, 1 boy, 1 girl, shade in the widow's peak. So for the first generation, what are we going to have? What are our shapes?
Shaded in circle.
What are just the shapes, right? For now. Start with just the shapes.
Just the shapes?
Yeah.
Square.
Square.
Circle.
Then a circle. Square is not shaded in, circle shaded in, because the mother has the widow's peak. Then what's next? Emily? We have our 4 children. So maybe our sibling lines. And the question says 2 female children end up with the widow's peak. So what's their shape, and are they shaded in or not shaded in? Yeah. So what's the shape for the two female children? For female children. What's the shape? 2 circles, and are they shaded in or not shaded in? They're shaded in. So we have 2 girls, 2 circles shaded in. And then we have 2 children that do not have a widow's peak. 1 is a boy, 1's a girl. So what does that look like? Natalia? 1 circle, 1 square, not shaded in. Yeah, thumbs up, thumbs down. How we're doing with this? Good.
I have a thumbs up.
Girls, good. Okay. Generation 1, generation 2. Try doing 2 through 5 by yourself. Do not do 6 yet. But do 2 through 5 by yourself. If you need help, I'll be around.
Wait, so the shaded one is like the recessive?
No, shaded means they have the trait.
So for number 2, like the shaded one would be the square?
No, shaded in if they have the trait, so if they are tongue rollers.
Okay.
So with pedigrees, you shade in whether they have the trait. If they don't have the trait, it's not shaded in.
This is easy.
Anybody need another minute? Right. Who wants to do number 2? Right?
How do I do this?
Just
Okay.
tell me what they are.
I have a shaded square and a regular circle, and then down I have two shaded circles.
2 shaded circles. Very good. Who'd like to do number 3? Lindsay.
I have a shaded circle and a shaded square that connect down to.
Not a shaded circle.
Oh yeah.
Unattached should be unshaded.
Okay. And then they connect down to 2 shaded squares and then unshaded square.
Very good. So you're shading the attached earlobes. The mom was unattached, so it should be unshaded. Who'd like to do number 4? Oh.
Shaded square connecting to a non-shaded circle, and then, like, if you go down, it's a shaded circle, and then a not shaded circle, and it's not shaded circle.
Very good. Number 5.
I have a shaded square with a non-shaded circle. And then if you go down, you have one shaded square, one not shaded square, and then one shaded circle, and a not shaded circle.
How did we do on this? Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. We did pretty good. Not good at all. Everyone did pretty good. Awesome. Were they pretty easy?
Yeah.
All right, pedigrees are pretty simple. There are different types of pedigrees. Some traits are sex-linked, so they'll look a little different. Some are recessive linked, some are dominant linked. We won't really look too much into those and how to figure out, like, sometimes you won't know if somebody's shaded in or not, and you'll have to figure it out based on their children or their parents if they're shaded in. We're not going to really look at that in this class. You'll get into that when you get to high school, college. You'll go more into pedigrees and the different types, looking at various traits that are sex-linked. Someone who's a hemophiliac, with blood clotting disorder, that's sex-linked. So it's on the X chromosome. So it's passed down through the gametes of that X chromosome. So it's more prominent in boys and girls because boys only need that one X chromosome instead of the 2. We won't really look into that though in this class. Number 6. I'm going to have you guys do this on your own, but before you start, I'm going to give you a little bit of help. There's 4 generations. Joe's in generation number 3. So when you put in Joe, put him near the bottom, not at the very bottom, but he only has 1 generation below him, 2 above him. So you want to give yourself plenty of room to do it. So Joe has hitchhiker's thumb. He can bend the last joint of his thumb backwards, which is a dominant trait. His father has straight thumbs. His mom shares Joe's trait, so if she shares Joe's trait, she has what? What type of thumbs does she have?
Hitchhikers.
Hitchhikers. Joe's 2 brothers do not have hitchhiker's thumbs, but his 2 sisters do. Looking back in his family, Joe learns that his father's mother had hitchhiker's thumb, and his father's father had a straight thumb. Joe marries a woman with straight thumbs. Years later, Joe's children are born. 2 daughters have straight thumbs. One son has a hitchhiker's thumb, and the other son has a straight thumb. So draw a pedigree. Fill in, shade in the shapes if they have hitchhiker's thumb. So you're going to need to reread it, know which people go in which generations, which ones have the trait, which ones don't. So this one's a little more challenging.
Wait, do we have to start with the
What? What? You guys need another minute? A couple people still working on it. Who's still working on it?
Me.
I'm missing something. All right, we got about 4 minutes left, so I want to get through this before the end of class. So we have Joe here. Okay. Joe has hitchhiker's thumb, so it's colored in, right? His father, so we have coming up from Joe, because Joe's an offspring. His father did not have hitchhiker's thumb. His mother shares his trait. We all get that? Coming up, Joe. Yes? Joe had 2 brothers that don't have hitchhiker's thumb, so are they colored in or not colored in? And they're squares, right? Because boys are squares. He had 2 sisters that had hitchhiker's thumb. So they're circles and they're colored in. If you didn't do it in this particular order, it doesn't really matter. Siblings, it really doesn't matter what order you put them in. Typically, when you look at one, it usually goes by oldest to youngest, left to right. But generally, just for overall, it doesn't matter.
I did the whole thing.
Looking back on his family, his father's mother, so we're coming up from the father now. And you have to do the offspring line, this line coming down, and then the mating line across. His father's mother had hitchhiker's thumb, and his father's father did not. So this should go into his father. So with the offspring, they should always go into whatever, the parents should always go into whatever children they have. Joe got married to a woman who had straight thumbs. So we all in the same place so far? So we should get married. They had kids, so it comes down from the center of that line, the mating line. And they had 4 children. They had 2 girls without hitchhiker's thumb, 1 boy with hitchhiker's thumb, 1 boy without. Generation 1 were Joe's grandparents. Generation 2 were his parents. Joe's generation 3, and Joe's children were generation 4. How do we do on this one?
Good.
Pretty good?
I did them all like in order. Like those are like
So this is
father's father.
and his father's. So this. That's not it's not his mother's mother. Father's mother.
Oh, father.
Yeah. What it says. I don't see you guys tomorrow, right?
Did you count my homework from Friday?
Tomorrow we do see them, right?
Yeah.
No, 4.
Oh, whatever.
Did I?